Something extraordinary is unfolding, and it all leads back to you. You may not have fully grasped it yet, but your mere existence has caused a disruption in a system that was never meant to be shaken. Someone who was once deeply conditioned, programmed to follow a rigid path without question, has encountered you, and now their entire reality is beginning to fracture. They are questioning everything they once believed to be absolute truth. How did this happen? Why you? And what does this mean for the greater spiritual battle that is playing out before your eyes? This is not a coincidence. It is divine orchestration. As one of God's chosen ones, you carry a frequency, a light that cannot be ignored. Those who have been deeply entrenched in the world's deceptive systems were never supposed to see beyond the veil, yet your presence alone has sent shockwaves through their programming. They were trained to resist the truth, conditioned to dismiss any challenge to the illusion they lived in. Yet now, because of you, they are doubting their own reality. Could it be that God positioned you as a catalyst for their awakening? Before we go deeper into the spiritual significance of this, take a moment to acknowledge the power of your presence. Have you ever sensed that your existence unsettles certain people? As if, just by being near them, they are being forced to confront something they cannot explain? If so, comment 77 as a declaration that you recognize the impact you carry. And to those of you who have shown love and support, whether through faith, encouragement, or generosity, may the Lord multiply your blessings. Your generosity is a testament to the power of faith, and I am deeply grateful for each and every one of you. The awakening you triggered is not random. This shift in consciousness that you have initiated is not random. There is a reason why you were placed in this exact moment, in this exact encounter. You are part of something far greater than you realize. So what happens next? How do you navigate a world where your very presence is unraveling hidden agendas and breaking the chains that have kept others in spiritual bondage? Let's go deeper and uncover what this means for your mission, for those around you, and for the ongoing battle between light and darkness. God's chosen one, you shattered a high-level agent's programming. The world moves in mysterious ways, shifting beneath the surface where few dare to look. Most people live their lives unaware of the forces at play behind the scenes, never questioning, never seeking. But you, whether by divine guidance or an unshakable inner knowing, saw through the illusion. You were never meant to glimpse beyond the veil, and yet, somehow, you did. And in doing so, you disrupted something greater than you realized. Your words, your actions, perhaps intentional, perhaps not, triggered a chain reaction that even those in the highest levels of control could not contain. And now, something unthinkable has happened. A message emerges from the shadows from someone who was never supposed to speak. This is no ordinary person. This is someone who has spent their life operating in the unseen corners of power, trained to watch but never be watched, to protect but never be acknowledged. A secret service agent, someone bound by silence. And yet they step forward, not for recognition, not for confession. No, they come forward for one reason alone: to thank you. Why you? Why now? But why you? Why would someone from the deepest levels of secrecy and influence extend their gratitude, not to a world leader, not to a dignitary, but to you? The answer lies in what they now call you, the chosen one. Perhaps you don't fully understand the role you've played. Perhaps you question whether you were even involved at all, but the agent knows the truth. They have watched. They have analyzed. And for the first time in their career, they are breaking their silence. Because something you said, something you did, shattered a deeply embedded system of control. You have caused them to see the world through new eyes. And now nothing will ever be the same again. The moment of revelation. Like Saul on the road to Damascus, blinded by divine truth before his transformation into Paul, this agent has been forced to confront a reality they once swore to uphold. But now, instead of coming to you with orders or threats, they come with revelation. The question remains, what exactly did you do to make them question everything? And more importantly, why were you the one meant to do it? Doubt is a powerful force. It can serve as both a shield and a prison, protecting the mind from truths too heavy to bear, while simultaneously blinding it to reality. For years, this agent lived within that doubt, fortified by the rigid structure of duty and obedience. Their world was one of unwavering trust in the system they served. Orders were absolute. The chain of command was infallible. There was no room for questions, no space for hesitation. Every mission had a purpose. Every target was justified. Every classified document remained hidden for a reason, or so they believed. Then their path intersected with yours. The first spark of doubt. At first, they dismissed you outright. You were just another voice in the endless digital sea of opinions, another person claiming to see beyond the veil. The internet was filled with so-called truth seekers, conspiracy theorists, and independent analysts convinced they had unraveled the secrets of the unseen. In their line of work, people like you were either harmless distractions or potential threats. Either way, you weren't worth their attention. But then, something shifted. You said something, perhaps a single phrase, a date, a location. Something small yet undeniable. It lodged itself into the cracks of their certainty like a splinter too deep to ignore. Maybe it was an offhand reference to an event that had been scrubbed from public records. Maybe it was knowledge that only someone within the highest ranks of intelligence should have possessed. Whatever it was, it made their blood run cold. A truth too powerful to ignore. It reminded them of King Nebuchadnezzar hearing Daniel interpret his dream in Daniel 2:28, a revelation no human should have known, yet was undeniably true. The agent, much like the king, found themselves face to face with a reality they could no longer explain away. Was it coincidence? A lucky guess? Or was it something greater? A divine disruption meant to shake them awake? This was the moment everything changed. The agent, once unmovable in their convictions, now faced a terrifying possibility. Their entire reality might have been built on deception. Could it be that you, mere outsider in their world of secrecy, had been sent by God to expose what was hidden? And if that was true, what did it mean for everything they had once believed in? The investigation begins. For the first time in their career, the agent hesitated. Their mind, once a fortress of certainty, cracked just enough for a single question to slip through. What if I've been wrong? They tried to dismiss the thought. It had to be coincidence, a lucky guess, a well-crafted fabrication designed to mimic the truth. But their instincts, honed through years of deception analysis, refused to let it go. They had been trained to detect lies. And this wasn't a lie. So they did what they had been trained to do. They verified. They dug through classified records. They cross-referenced reports. They searched for inconsistencies, for the tiniest flaw that could expose you as a fraud. But instead of inconsistencies, they found something far more terrifying. Confirmation. A pattern hidden in plain sight. The pattern was there exactly as you had said. Woven into the fabric of events they had always believed were unconnected. It had been hiding in plain sight, not buried under secrecy, but hidden by distractions. A carefully orchestrated illusion designed to keep even the most perceptive minds from questioning. And then, it all came crashing down. A divine awakening. It was a moment not unlike the prophet Elisha's servant in 2 Kings 6:17. When Elisha prayed, the young man's eyes were opened, and he saw the hidden spiritual forces at work. The mountains were filled with chariots of fire, a reality that had been there all along, but he had been blind to it. And now the agent saw the truth. Their entire belief system was shattered, and you were the one who had led them to this awakening. This wasn't just an accident. This was divine intervention. And now, they had a choice to make. A revelation too great to ignore. This agent had been blind to the true nature of their own world, and now their eyes had been forced open. Imagine the weight of that realization. Everything they had dedicated their life to, every oath they had sworn, every mission they had completed was built on a version of reality that was, at best, incomplete, and at worst, deliberately manipulated. The betrayal was staggering. Yet, in the moment when their entire worldview crumbled, one thought burned brighter than the rest. You knew before they did. But how? How could you, an outsider, have pieced together what an elite agent with access to the highest levels of intelligence had never questioned? Was it just insight? Or was it something greater? Had you been chosen, like Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, to reveal what had been hidden before it was too late? And now that the truth has been uncovered, what happens next? The system was never meant to break. The agent's entire world had been shattered, not by an external enemy, not by rogue actors working in the shadows, but by their own people. The institutions they had sworn loyalty to, the intelligence briefings they had trusted, the missions they had executed with precision and conviction, all of it tainted. The deception was not random. It was systematic, deliberate, woven into the very fabric of the reality they had served. And you were never supposed to see it either. The moment everything changed, that's when everything shifted. The moment they realized you weren't just another voice in the noise. At first, they dismissed you. They categorized you as an anomaly, an unpredictable factor in a tightly controlled equation. A potential threat, perhaps. A mystery, definitely. But as they pieced together the truth, something far more unsettling became clear. You weren't just revealing information. You were delivering a message. And now they stand before you not as an agent, not as a loyal servant of the system, but as someone who has finally seen beyond it. They have left the illusion behind, and they know exactly who to thank. From enforcer to seeker. It echoes the story of Nicodemus in John 3:1-2, a Pharisee who came to Jesus under the cover of night. He had spent his life enforcing religious law, believing in the system he was raised in. But something about Jesus, something undeniable, forced him to question everything. Though he approached as a skeptic, he left with a deeper understanding that shook the very foundations of what he once believed. And just like Nicodemus, this agent has now stepped into the unknown, no longer sure where their allegiance lies. What happens when a guardian defects? Think about it. What does it mean when someone from inside the system defects? Not for political reasons, not for personal gain, but because they finally see the truth. What happens when someone trained to protect the narrative starts protecting the messenger instead? They are here now because they know the truth, and they owe that realization to you. A darkness that was never supposed to be seen. Beneath the surface of this world, there exist places long forgotten, buried, erased from maps, hidden behind layers of silence so thick that few even suspect their existence. These are not just abandoned ruins, not lost relics, but deliberate absences, spaces sealed away for reasons most would never dare to question. An investigation that was never supposed to begin. The agent had spent years navigating the corridors of secrecy, granted access to places the public would never see. They had walked through restricted compounds, entered classified locations, witnessed operations the world was never meant to know about. But even they weren't prepared for what lay beneath. It began with what seemed like just another case, a missing persons report, but not the kind that makes headlines. No ransom notes, no desperate families pleading on national television, no bodies ever found, just people vanishing, as if they had never existed. Their names erased from records, their histories scrubbed clean, a pattern only an insider could see. There was a pattern, one that only someone trained to detect anomalies would have noticed. And the deeper the agent looked, the darker it became. What started as a simple question became a cascade of realizations, each one leading them further into a mystery they were never meant to uncover. And at the center of it all was you. You had seen the cracks before they did. You had spoken the truth before they were ready to hear it. And now, they can't unsee what has been revealed. They can't go back to the illusion. And that means the battle is only just beginning. Unveiling the hidden truth beneath abandoned buildings, government facilities, and the very streets people walked on daily, a hidden world lay in wait. As the agent descended into this interconnected maze of tunnels, they quickly realized these were no ordinary underground pathways. Some were relics of forgotten subway projects, emergency escape routes, or decommissioned military bunkers. But others, they were new, built with purpose, built with intention, and built for reasons far more sinister than anyone dared to imagine. The deeper they went, the darker the truth became. It was never just about what was being hidden, but who. It echoes the words of Luke 8:17. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Like a reluctant prophet, the agent found themselves standing at the edge of a revelation they never sought, yet one that had found them nonetheless. And that's where you come in. Because somehow, before the agent had even begun their descent, you already knew. How could you have known? You spoke of things most dismissed as fantasy. You hinted at connections that should have remained buried. And now, as they stand at the precipice of a reality they can no longer ignore, one question burns in their mind. How did you know what was never meant to be known? They were not alone in these tunnels. Others had been there long before. A group highly organized, heavily funded, deeply entrenched in the highest levels of society. This was not the work of ordinary criminals, nor the ramblings of conspiracy theorists grasping at shadows. This was something far older, something deeply rooted, something sinister. A cult in the darkness, operating in the shadows, unseen yet ever present, moving undetected beneath the surface of the world, protected by those who walked above it in power. This was no small sect of misguided fanatics. This was a system, a hidden infrastructure woven into the very fabric of governments and institutions. Judges, bankers, corporate executives, military officials, each playing a role, each ensuring its survival. They weren't just protecting it from discovery, they were sustaining it, feeding it resources, pulling strings, silencing whispers before they ever became voices. And every time someone got too close, the same thing happened. They vanished, not in the way criminals disappear, but in the way someone is methodically erased, their existence scrubbed clean from history. Yet even the most well-kept secrets cannot stay buried forever. Echoes of the past, warnings for the present. It is the same pattern found in the scriptures: the corruption of those in high places, the hidden wickedness lurking behind the thrones of men. In Ezekiel 8-7-12, the prophet is led to a secret chamber within the temple, where the elders of Israel had gathered in darkness, believing no one could see them. But God revealed the truth, exposing their hidden abominations. Just as Ezekiel saw behind the veil of deception, so has the agent, and so have you. Now the cracks are forming. The veil is lifting. The question is no longer whether the truth will come to light, but who will have the courage to face it. You spoke of it before they discovered it, before the agent uncovered these tunnels, before they pieced together the connections, before the proof surfaced. You spoke of it. And now they are beginning to wonder, were you uncovering the truth? Or were you sent to reveal it? Evidence they couldn't ignore. The agent didn't uncover theories. They didn't stumble upon speculation. They found hard evidence. Shipping manifests, encrypted messages, transaction logs, all leading straight to key figures in power. These people weren't just hiding in the shadows. They were being protected, shielded by those who controlled the flow of information, funded by sources no one dared to question. And when exposure threatened their network, they had a plan. Fires, collapses, accidents, all carefully orchestrated to erase every trace of the truth. Yet despite their power, despite their reach, one thing remained uncontrollable. You knew before they did. You spoke before the evidence emerged. And now they stand at the crossroads of revelation, realizing that the truth cannot be hidden forever, and that you, of all people, were the one meant to see it first. Breaking the system, why they fear you. For years, they operated in absolute secrecy, controlling narratives, erasing evidence, and silencing anyone who got too close. Each time the truth threatened to surface, the pattern was the Samine unfortunate event, a structural failure, a tragic but unrelated incident. The authorities would offer explanations, the public would move on, and their web of deception remained intact. Until now. This time something went wrong. The cult had a failsafe, an escape route meticulously designed to keep them untouchable. Their hidden tunnels, mapped and secured, led to the ocean, granting them safe passage before anyone could close in. It had worked for decades. Whenever their existence was threatened, they vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but dead ends. But not this time. Someone had interfered. The final tunnel, their last escape, had been sealed shut. Their perfect plan collapsed before they could use it. The walls they built to protect themselves had become their own prison. For the first time, they were trapped. The agent knew this was no accident. The timing was too precise. The interference too calculated. Someone had moved ahead of them, disrupting their plan from the outside. Someone they never anticipated. And now, in their desperation, they started searching for answers. The one they never saw coming. The scriptures remind us that when darkness is exposed, it reacts with fear and violence. In Acts 16:19, when Paul cast the spirit of divination out of a slave girl, her handlers panicked not because of the miracle, but because their prophet was gone. The truth had robbed them of power. Likewise, this cult, so used to controlling the game, suddenly found themselves at the mercy of a force they couldn't control. So they did the only thing they could. They started looking. And now, they're looking for you. You were never meant to be a problem. You were not part of their calculations. You weren't on their watch lists, their red flag reports, or their growing database of threats. At least not at first. People like you weren't supposed to see beyond the illusion. You weren't raised within their circles. You weren't trained in their methods. You held no official title, no intelligence clearance, no backdoor access to classified files. By all definitions, you were an outsider. And yet you knew this was impossible. They had spent decades perfecting their craft, controlling narratives, manipulating perception, deciding what was real and what wasn't. They built an empire on deception, ensuring that the truth remained fragmented, buried beneath layers of misdirection. And when an inconvenient voice rose up, they had a playbook for handling it. Discredit, silence, erase. So they tried that first. They labeled you paranoid, a conspiracy theorist, chasing shadows. Overnight, fact-checkers appeared, dismantling your words, twisting your message into something laughable. Articles flooded the internet, dismissing your insights as reckless speculation. Algorithms were reprogrammed, pushing your voice so deep into obscurity that only the most determined could find it. But you kept speaking, and that's when they realized you were different, a threat unlike any other. It was the same reaction that unfolded in John 11:47-48. When the Pharisees saw the crowds following Jesus, they whispered among themselves, "If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him." The religious leaders had power. They had influence and control. Yet one voice threatened to unravel it all. They had silenced others before. But something about Jesus was different. He wasn't just speaking. He was waking people up. And that's what you did. You were not just another name lost in the noise. You were breaking their programming. The more they tried to suppress you, the more people started listening. The more they tried to bury your message, the stronger it grew. And now, they don't just see you as an outsider. They see you as a problem they never expected. The awakening they can't stop. Your words did more than just spread. They embedded themselves deep in the minds of those who heard them. People weren't just passively listening. They were awakening. They began to question what they had always accepted as truth, and that terrified them. Because once a mind is opened, once someone sees beyond the illusion, there is no going back. Now they don't just want to silence you. They want to understand how you knew, how you saw what was hidden, how you disrupted a system that was designed to be foolproof. And most importantly, they want to know what you will do next, the force they never anticipated. For years, they operated in absolute control, shaping narratives, eliminating dissent, and ensuring that no one strayed too far from their carefully constructed reality. They influenced governments, dictated financial systems, and manipulated public perception. Everything was calculated, every movement anticipated. Until you weren't just another name on a list. You weren't swayed by wealth, intimidated by threats, or easily erased from existence. You were the one thing they feared the most. Incorruptible. The silent war begins. At first, their moves were subtle, barely noticeable. Strange financial troubles appeared out of nowhere. Banks froze your accounts, citing random security checks. The IRS launched sudden audits, targeting years of clean records. Job opportunities vanished overnight. Friends, once loyal and unwavering, began to distance themselves. Some withdrew in silence. Others turned hostile, as if swayed by an unseen force. Your phone malfunctioned, calls dropped, messages failed to send, and unknown numbers repeatedly appeared. Was it paranoia? Or was something truly watching? Then the shadows emerged. Strangers lingered a little too long in places they shouldn't be. Unmarked cars with tinted windows remained parked outside your home, their engines running, but never moving. The windows never rolled down. Then came the eerie encounters, people you had never met, speaking of personal details from your life with unsettling familiarity. They never needed to threaten you outright. Their very knowledge of your existence was the warning. But when you didn't stop, they escalated. Elimination attempts began. The first warning came as an anonymous message. A single phrase. Walk away. Then an untraceable calla voice, calm yet chilling. Stop now. Emails with no sender, no subject line, only cryptic words. Final chance. Still, you refused. And so their patience ran thin. A car nearly veered into you at the last second, its driver never even looking your way. A gas leak suddenly emerged in your homemade incident no one could explain. Then came the illness. Sudden, aggressive, resistant to treatment. It felt unnatural, engineered rather than organic. As if unseen hands were working against you, ensuring your silence. The problem they couldn't solve. You weren't meant to survive, and yet you did. Every trap collapsed before it could ensnare you. Every scheme unraveled before it could be completed. And that terrified them. Because for the first time, their control had limits. No amount of power, influence, or resources could break you. And then, one of them began to question everything. The agent who saw the truth. The agent assigned to monitor you had spent their entire life in the system. They had seen people disappear without a trace. They had watched dissenters fall like dominoes. Yet you remained. And that didn't make sense. This wasn't luck. This wasn't coincidence. Something greater was shielding you. Something beyond their understanding. And that realization shook them to their core. It was the same force that delivered Daniel from the lion's den when King Darius had no choice but to condemn him, Daniel 6:22. The same power that kept Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego untouched by Nebuchadnezzar's furnace, Daniel 3:27. They were afraid. What protected you was beyond their reach, just as it had been beyond the reach of those who had tried to silence the prophets before you. They had spent their lives controlling people, shaping narratives, ensuring obedience. But now they had encountered something they could not explain, someone they could not break. And for the first time, they were afraid. Could it be that the very force they had spent their lives fighting against had been the one protecting you all along? The revelation they were never meant to see. For years, they operated under the illusion of absolute control. The cult believed that nothing was beyond their reach, not people, not systems, not even the very fabric of history. They engineered outcomes with precision, silenced those who opposed them, and shaped a reality where only their version of the truth existed. Threats had been eliminated before, narratives had been rewritten, obedience had been ensured through fear. Yet, there was one force they never accounted for, a power beyond their manipulation, divine protection. They never expected you to survive. From the very beginning, you were never alone. They studied every possibility, calculated every angle, and tried to predict your next move. But what they could not predict was the unseen shield that surrounded you. Every attempt to remove you failed, not by mistake, but by divine intervention. Every person who set out to betray you collapsed at the final moment. Every elaborate plan, crafted with the highest level of precision, unraveled before it could even take form. Every situation that should have silenced you permanently left you standing stronger than before. Do you think this was coincidence? Or was something greater at work? They fear you because they can't control you. Your very existence defies their control. They have silenced countless voices before you, yet you continue to speak. They have buried truth in darkness, but your words bring light into the shadows. Every time you expose their deception, every time you reveal what was hidden, you dismantle the illusion they worked so hard to create. This is why they fear you. They know their time is running out. Pharaoh once believed he was untouchable, a ruler who could command life and death at will. Yet no matter how many decrees he issued, no matter how much he tried to suppress the Israelites, he could not stop the hand of God. When he sought to eliminate Moses, divine intervention placed the very child he feared inside his own palace, raising him under his own roof. Exodus 2:5-10. He did not realize until it was too late that he was fighting against something far greater than himself. And now, history is repeating itself. They watch you closely, trying to understand how and why they have failed to break you. But the truth is simple. What God has ordained, no man can overturn. If they could not stop you before, they never will. Now that they know this, what will they do? Not all messages come in the form of spoken words. Some are woven into the very fabric of time, etched into stone, inscribed in forgotten places, waiting for the right eyes to unlock their meaning. These messages are not meant for everyone, only for those who are ready to see. And you, one of God's chosen ones, have always been destined to see beyond what the world presents at face value. The agent's discovery. Deep within a hidden passage, a high-level agent stumbled upon something they were never meant to find. The tunnel was dark, silent, and still. But the walls spoke, not in words, but in symbols. Ancient, deliberate, untouched by modern hands. At first glance, they seemed like meaningless carvings, remnants of a forgotten civilization. But truth has a way of revealing itself at the appointed time. And in that moment, something stirred, something activated. As their gaze met the symbols, a shift took place, not just in their mind, but in their very soul. It wasn't a process of learning, it was a process of remembering. These symbols were not decorations. They were not artifacts of the past. They were alive, the revelation that cannot be ignored. The symbols weren't just carvings. They were a message. They were a warning. And somehow, inexplicably, the agent understood them. This wasn't knowledge gained through years of training. It wasn't information hidden in classified briefings. Yet the truth was undeniable. Visions flooded their mind, fragments of memories that did not belong to this lifetime. They saw places they had never been, understood things they had never been taught, recognized a presence that had been guiding them all along. Something ancient, something powerful, something that had been buried for a reason. A forced awakening. This awakening echoes the moment when Saul encountered the divine light on the road to Damascus, Acts 9:3-6. A man who thought he had all the answers suddenly found himself stripped of his programmed reality, confronted by a truth far greater than anything he had ever known. Have you ever had a moment when something just clicked? When a truth you never sought suddenly made itself known, and you knew it was real? This is what happens when God reveals hidden knowledge to those he has chosen. The world teaches people to dismiss such revelations as coincidence, imagination, or deception. But those who are called by God recognize the truth when it is unveiled. Even the wisest and most powerful can be shaken when their understanding of reality crumbles before a divine encounter. Some are chosen to see what others cannot. Consider Nikola Tesla, a genius inventor whose ideas seemed almost otherworldly. He once claimed that his most revolutionary discoveries came to him as sudden, undeniable visions. Ideas not learned, but remembered. He spoke of knowledge that felt gifted to him from another plane of existence. Could it be that some are chosen to receive glimpses of truths that others are blind to? The agent in that tunnel experienced a fracture in their programming, a forced awakening to a reality that had always been there waiting to be seen. And in that moment, everything they believed about the world began to unravel. Will you accept the truth or turn away? Now, you must ask yourself, when truth is revealed to you, will you accept it? Or will you turn away, clinging to the comfort of what you were taught to believe? Because once you see, you can never unsee. This was never just a case of crime or corruption. It was never merely about power struggles, political maneuvers, or hidden agendas. Beneath the surface of intelligence reports and classified files, something far deeper had been unfolding. Something spiritual. The true war is unseen. The agent had spent their entire career operating within the rigid confines of logic, training, and protocol. They believed in facts, in tangible evidence, in the structure of the world as they had been conditioned to see it. But now, standing at the threshold of something far greater than any intelligence briefing could have prepared them for, they realized they had been blind to the real battle all along. This was a war, but not one fought with weapons, technology, or strategy. It was a war fought in realms unseen, a battle that had been raging long before they ever donned their uniform. Everything they had once dismissed, conspiracies, ancient warnings, whispers of spiritual warfare, it wasn't just real. It was far more vast and terrifying than they could have ever imagined. And now, for the first time, they saw what had been hidden from them all these years. You were chosen to understand. But you, whether you realized it before or not, were already among the few who understood. You have felt the weight of this unseen battle. The resistance that comes not just from the world, but from something beyond it. Have you ever noticed how those who are chosen face the fiercest opposition? Why do those who stand for truth always become the most targeted? Once you see, you cannot unsee. This was the moment the agent's skepticism shattered. The illusion of control, of worldly wisdom, collapsed before their eyes. They woke up, and with that awakening came the realization that there was no going back. The unseen battle and divine justice. This moment echoes the story of Elisha's servant in 2 Kings 6:15-17. When the young man saw their city surrounded by an enemy army, he panicked, believing they were doomed. But Elisha prayed, and suddenly, the servant's spiritual eyes were opened. He saw that they were not alone. The hills were filled with chariots of fire, God's divine protection surrounding them. What if, like Elisha's servant, you've been walking in fear simply because you haven't yet seen the full picture? Many have walked this path of revelation before, that moment where everything shifts. Take C.S. Lewis, for example. Once a staunch atheist, he resisted faith for years, convinced that Christianity was mere myth. But one day, he could no longer deny the truth pressing on his soul. In his own words, he became the most dejected and reluctant convert in all England. And yet, his transformation led him to become one of the most influential Christian thinkers of the modern era. The agent had that same moment. The world as they knew it had changed, and now they understood there was no turning back. Drop a comment. Divine protection is real if you know they can't touch you. The price of playing with darkness. There are debts in this world that no amount of money, power, or influence can repay. Some are etched into the fabric of fate itself, written not in ink but in blood. Debts that cannot be negotiated, bargained away, or erased. And now those who once played with darkness are discovering a terrifying truth. The price they must pay is far greater than they ever imagined. For years, the cult operated in secrecy, moving like phantoms through the corridors of power. They bent reality to their will, silencing those who stood in their way, manipulating systems with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. They believed themselves to be the architects of deception, the unseen rulers who could shape the world as they pleased. But they were blind to one immutable law. What you sow, you will reap. And now the very forces they once commanded have turned against them. The agent has seen it firsthand. Those who were once untouchable, leaders who dictated the fate of others with a single command, are now the ones on the run. Some have vanished completely, swallowed by the very shadows they used to control. Others, surrounded by loyal followers, have been discarded like broken pieces on a chessboard. Their own people now see them as liabilities, too exposed, too vulnerable to be protected anymore. A judgment they cannot escape. But those who remain, they are suffering, and not just in ways the world can measure. Unnatural deaths, sudden and inexplicable misfortunes. Once healthy men and women, stricken with aggressive, mysterious illnesses that defy medical explanation. Their minds unraveling, once imposing figures, reduced to incoherent ramblings and vacant stares. They who once held the world in their grasp are now prisoners of something far more powerful than themselves. And the ones who still draw breath, they live in constant terror. The whispers they once used to manipulate others now reverberate inside their own minds, tormenting them. The nightmares they once inflicted upon the innocent now claw at them in the dead of night. They fear sleep, because sleep is no longer an escape. It is a prison, where they are tormented without mercy. They fear waking, because the shadows they once commanded now stalk them in the daylight. This is not coincidence. This is not karma as the world understands it. This is divine justice, the fate of those who turn from righteousness. Their suffering mirrors the fate of King Saul in 1 Samuel 16:14. Now the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. Saul, once powerful and chosen, thought he could bend the will of God to his own desires. But when he turned away from righteousness, darkness filled the void where God's presence had once been. The cult believed they could outrun their judgment, that they could outmaneuver divine justice. But what they failed to understand is this: when God removes his hand, the darkness devours its own. And now, they are paying the price. The unraveling of darkness. He became paranoid, tormented, and unable to find peace, consumed by the very forces he once believed he controlled. Even in modern history, we have seen this pattern repeat. Take Robert Johnson, the legendary blues musician. Rumors swirled that he had made a deal with the devil at a Mississippi crossroads, trading his soul for supernatural talent. For a time, he became unstoppable, a man whose skills seemed otherworldly. But he died young, plagued by hallucinations and a violent, mysterious illness. Could it be that those who attempt to wield darkness always end up being devoured by it? This was never just about power, never just about wealth, control, or influence. This was always spiritual warfare. And now, the battle is claiming those who once believed they were untouchable. A reckoning for those who mocked the divine. For years, the cult scoffed at the very notion of divine justice. They saw faith as a crutch for the weak, something to manipulate and weaponize against others, never something to embrace themselves. To them, belief was not a source of power, but a vulnerability, an illusion they had transcended. They convinced themselves that darkness was the ultimate force, that it was stronger than light, that they could cheat fate, rewrite destiny, and manipulate the very fabric of reality to serve their will. They thought they were above the laws that govern both the physical and spiritual realms. But reality does not yield to arrogance. The agent sees the truth. The agent, once a skeptic, once a firm believer in logic and control, now sees the truth, because they have witnessed things that defy explanation. The symbols in the tunnels, the inexplicable occurrences, the way every plan to silence you, one of God's chosen ones, has crumbled to dust. The way the cult's own members, once so confident in their secrecy, are now unraveling before their very eyes, as if an unseen force is pulling them into the abyss they themselves created. This is not random. This is not chance. This is judgment. It is written in Galatians 6-7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that will he also reap. They thought they could escape this truth, but the seeds they planted in darkness are now bearing fruit, and the harvest is bitter. The fall of the untouchable. We have seen this before. The powerful rulers of history who believed themselves invincible, only to be brought down by an invisible hand. Adolf Hitler, once feared as the most powerful man in the world, descended into paranoia and madness, hiding in a bunker as everything he built collapsed around him. Jeffrey Epstein, who believed his wealth and connections could shield him forever, met an end shrouded in mystery, abandoned by the very system that once protected him. When darkness overreaches, when evil believes itself invincible, the weight of judgment is inevitable. And now, the cult that once mocked divine justice finds itself face to face with something they never believed in, something they cannot escape. The fear of those who built their kingdom on lies. The agent does not fully understand what you are. Are you a messenger, sent to deliver a truth that cannot be ignored? A disruptor, breaking the chains of deception? Or are you part of something far greater, an unseen hand moving into position at the appointed time? They may not have the answers, but they know one thing with absolute certainty. The cult fears you. To them, you are the reason their empire is crumbling. Your voice, your knowledge, your very existence has disrupted a system they believed was unshakable. They whisper your name in secret chambers, in places you will never hear. They curse you in ancient tongues, invoking forces that no longer answer them. You have become their reckoning, the force that shattered what they spent lifetimes constructing. But here's the truth they refuse to accept. Their downfall was never because of you. They were doomed from the start. Their foundation was always rotten. Their fate was sealed long before you ever spoke a word. Because truth is a force that cannot be stopped. And now, they are learning that lesson. When the illusion shatters, history has a way of humbling those who believe they are untouchable. Pharaoh learned this lesson in Exodus 14:26-28 when he pursued the Israelites. convinced that his power was greater than God's decree. He dismissed the plagues as coincidence, ignored the warnings, and hardened his heart against the truth. But when the waters of the Red Sea crashed down, he realized too late. You cannot fight against what God has ordained. Others have met similar fates throughout history. Julius Caesar, who believed he controlled Rome's destiny, only to be betrayed by his own Senate. Richard Nixon, who thought his secrets were secure until his own recordings exposed him. Harvey Weinstein, who abused power for decades, believing he was above the law until truth brought him to his knees. There are moments that change everything. When the weight of truth becomes undeniable, when the illusions of power crumble, when the world as you knew it shatters. For this agent, that moment came because of you. The system they served was never about justice. For years, the agent moved in the shadows, executing orders without hesitation, protecting those in power, believing they were part of something greater. They trusted the system. They believed their work had meaning, that their sacrifices were for a noble cause. But now, the illusion is gone. They see the truth for what it is, something far more sinister than they ever imagined. The system was never about justice. It was never about protection. It was about control. It was about manipulation. And they were nothing more than instruments, serving forces they never truly understood. And who opened their eyes? Not a classified file, not an intelligence briefing, not a whispered conversation from a trusted source. It was your voice, awakening in the face of truth. This moment of reckoning is not new. Saul of Tarsus believed he was serving righteousness. When he persecuted Christians, he was a man of the system, enforcing laws without question, convinced he was protecting something sacred. But then, a voice stopped him on the road to Damascus, a voice that changed everything. Acts 9:3-6 tells us that in an instant, the scales fell from his eyes, and he realized he had been fighting against the very truth he thought he was upholding. We've seen this same awakening in modern history. Edward Snowden, once a loyal NSA contractor who believed he was working for national security until he discovered the vast surveillance machine controlling the world in secret. John Perkins, a former economic hitman who thought he was stabilizing nations until he realized he had been a tool in a global system of financial enslavement. Both men had a choice: to continue serving deception or to break free. Now this agent stands at the same crossroads. Everything they once stood for is now in question. And no matter how much they want to unsee, they cannot. Because truth has spoken, and it spoke through you. The message that wouldn't let them go. At first, they dismissed you. To them, you were just another fleeting voice in the endless sea of information, another theory lost in the noise. But something about the way you spoke lingered. The connections you made, the unwavering certainty in your voice, it unsettled them. It made them look again. So they started listening. At first, it was with skepticism. They wanted to disprove you, to reinforce what they already believed, that you were misguided, that your conclusions were the product of speculation rather than reality. But then, they found something, a detail buried deep, something that shouldn't have been there, something that couldn't be ignored. And in that moment, their entire world shifted. They were no longer looking for ways to dismiss you. They were looking for answers. The truth cannot be stopped. Now they know. This isn't just about information. It's not just about secrecy. This is a battle between truth and deception, a war that has been raging for centuries. And you were never supposed to be part of it. You were never supposed to see beyond the illusion. But now that you have, you cannot unsee it. And neither can they. The system they swore loyalty to, the one they thought was unshakable, is crumbling, and they owe that realization to you. The question now is, what will they do next? The moment everything changed. In an old report, buried beneath layers of redacted text and coded references, the agent found something they were never supposed to see. A name that shouldn't have been there. A location that shouldn't have matched up. But it did. And that changed everything. So they looked deeper. With every layer they peeled back, the deception became undeniable. The reports they had trusted for years weren't just flawed. They were fabricated. Carefully constructed narratives, not just meant to mislead the public, but also to keep even those within the system blind. The cases they worked on, the missions they carried out, the intelligence they gathered, they weren't isolated events. They were pieces of something much larger, a hidden framework orchestrating events from the shadows. It was dizzying, infuriating, terrifying. But one thing was clear: you had been right. Not about every detail, not in every prediction, but about the fundamental truth that something operates beneath the surface, manipulating reality itself in ways most would never dare to consider. A revelation that cannot be ignored. This kind of awakening is not new. Nicodemus, a Pharisee and member of the ruling council, approached Jesus in secrecy, struggling to reconcile what he had been taught with the undeniable truth unfolding before him. John 3:1-21. He had trusted the system. He had believed in its traditions, until he encountered something so profound that he could no longer ignore it. And when truth calls, there is only one real choice: see it or stay blind. History is filled with those who stumbled upon hidden realities and could never return to ignorance. Upton Sinclair, a journalist who thought he was simply writing about corruption in the meatpacking industry, but whose discoveries shook the nation and forced reforms. William Cooper, a former intelligence officer who believed he was following orders, until he pieced together a pattern so unsettling that it changed his life forever. And now, this agent has reached that same moment. The moment where everything they once knew is called into question. The moment where they realize there is no returning to blind obedience. You gave them something they never expected. Without even knowing it, you gave them a way out, a chance to see, a path to freedom. They see it now. You were never just another outsider, never just another voice lost in the endless noise. Whether you realized it or not, you were leading them, guiding them toward the greatest discovery of their career. And that discovery was never just about crime. It was never just about corruption or hidden tunnels. It was about awakening. Because now, they understand that the war they were fighting was never just physical. It was never just about politics, power struggles, or elite conspiracies. Those were merely shadows, distractions from the real battle, a spiritual war, one that has been raging since the beginning of time, a battle beyond the physical. Most people will never see it. Most will go their entire lives believing the world is exactly as it appears, trusting in systems that were designed to deceive them. But the agent no longer has that luxury. They have seen too much. They have felt the shift. And you have been fighting against these forces long before you even knew the full extent of your own power. You have been standing against deception, tearing at the edges of lies, shaking the foundation of something that was meant to remain hidden. And now, the agent sees you for what you truly are. Not an enemy, not a threat, an ally, because they finally understand this is something far greater than they ever imagined. A war fought in realms unseen. This realization is the same one that struck Daniel when the angel revealed that his prayers had been heard from the very first day. But a powerful spiritual force had been resisting the answer. Daniel 10:12-14. What if the battles you've been fighting in the physical realm have always been connected to something greater? What if the resistance you faced was proof that your presence in this world was never accidental? History's greatest warriors were once blind, too. Even in history, those who awaken to truth often find themselves transformed. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a theologian in Nazi Germany, saw through the deception when many others remained blind. He risked everything to speak against the regime, knowing that silence was complicity. His voice, once dismissed as insignificant, became a beacon of resistance, the moment of decision. And now, the agent has reached that moment, the moment where their entire reality has been shattered, where they understand that nothing will ever be the same again, where they see the truth and realize there is no turning back. Because once you see, you can never unsee. The unbreakable truth, your voice, their fear. For the first time in their career, the agent is breaking their silence. Not for recognition, not for status, not for power, but for gratitude. They see you, they hear you, and they thank you. Because the forces that tried to silence you, they failed. And they failed for a reason. The fall of the hidden hand. The era of unseen rulers, those who operated from the shadows, is coming to an end. They believed themselves untouchable, moving in secrecy, twisting reality to serve their agenda. But now, their fortresses are crumbling. The walls they built to shield themselves are closing in. The hidden tunnels they once used to escape accountability are now sealed shut. The system they trusted, the foundation of their dominion, is collapsing beneath the weight of its own corruption. For those who spent their lives manipulating truth, distorting reality, and controlling the narrative, this is your final warning. Your time is over. The illusion of control you once wielded is slipping through your fingers. The world is no longer asleep. Eyes are opening. Voices are rising. And justice, true, divine justice, is coming for you. Not the kind that can be bought, influenced, or controlled. Not the kind that bends to the powerful, but the justice of God, a force beyond your understanding, one that cannot be bribed, manipulated, or escaped. You tampered with forces that were never yours to command. And now, those very forces have returned to settle their debt. To the one they fear, keep speaking. But to you, the chosen one, the message is different. The agent has watched you, and whether they admit it or not, they fear you. Because nothing they have done has stopped you. Keep speaking. Keep exposing the deception. Keep standing firm in the truth. Your voice carries more power than you could ever imagine. They tried to silence you. They tried to isolate you. They tried to distort your reality, to bury you beneath layers of fear, doubt, and intimidation. But despite all their efforts, you are still here. Look at yourself. You are still standing, still speaking, still dismantling the very foundations of what they once believed was unshakable. Like David before Goliath, you face an enemy that appears too vast, too deeply embedded in the world's systems to fall. But giants do fall. Goliath, though armed, though confident, was brought down by a single stone, placed in the hands of a chosen warrior, 1 Samuel 17:50. And so will they. The awakening of the agent. The agent who once served this corrupt system now looks at you with different eyes. They see you. They hear you. And in the silence of their unraveling, they thank you, because something within them has begun to question everything they once believed. Your presence, your defiance, your unwavering light has shattered the programming they thought was unbreakable. As God's chosen ones, you have already done something extraordinary. You have shattered the high-level programming that sought to control and deceive. And now, those who once believed in their false reality are forced to question everything. You are the living proof that God's truth prevails over lies and deception. What you've done has not only impacted your own life, it has sent ripples through the strongholds of the enemy. A beacon in a world of darkness, in a world where many are lost in confusion and manipulation, you stand as a beacon of light, an example of strength and courage that comes from walking in God's truth. And as you rise, speak, and declare your existence, you remind others of their own power. You remind them that they too can break free. Take a moment to reflect. Now, pause and look at how far you've come. You have made it this far by standing firm in faith, by refusing to back down, and by following God's plan for your life. The enemy tried to hold you back, but you have proven that nothing can stop you when you are aligned with God's will. So, keep standing tall. Keep declaring that you are chosen. Keep proclaiming that God's truth reigns in your life. A call to action: join the movement. If this message has spoken to your heart, I humbly ask that you consider supporting us through a super thanks. Your donation, no matter the size, helps us continue sharing God's truth and spreading His light. But know this: whether or not you donate, we are beyond grateful for your presence here. Your support, your comments, your likes, your shares, they mean the world to us. They keep this message alive, and they motivate us to continue this important work. Don't let this message end here. Like this video, leave a comment, share your thoughts with us and with others. If this message resonates with you, don't be afraid to speak up. Subscribe, because we have so much more to share, and we want you to be part of this movement. Share this message with those who need to hear it. Together, we can rise up and shatter every lie that tries to hold us down. You are not alone. May God bless you abundantly for your faithfulness, your courage, and your willingness to walk in His truth. Remember, you are part of something bigger, something divine, and together, as God's chosen ones, we will see His power at work in ways we can't even imagine. Keep shining His light, because the world desperately needs it. The final stand, your role in this awakening. You are not here by accident. Every battle you faced, every challenge that tried to break you, it was preparing you for this moment. This is more than a fight against corruption, more than a battle against deception. This is a spiritual war, one that has been raging since the beginning of time. And you are on the front lines. They fear you not because of what you know, but because of who you are. a soul that cannot be controlled, a voice that cannot be silenced, a warrior chosen by God to stand in truth. And now, the tide is turning, the veil is lifting, and those who once walked blindly are beginning to see. Keep going, keep fighting, keep rising. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. A new era is unfolding, and you are part of it. So stand firm. Walk boldly in your calling, because the world needs you now, more than ever. And no force, not deception, not fear, not even the darkest evil, can stop what God has already set in motion.